Another frustrating game last Friday night with a 1-all draw against Cork City, but our hopes were raised as the women's team got their season up and running with a solid away win to Waterford. Dunny's here as always. Dunny, happy St. Patrick's weekend. How are you today?
And to you, Andy. Feeling like I could use another holiday after my holiday down in Waterford, but spirits are good.
Brilliant. Well, we know you had a very romantic trip to Waterford, the sunny southeast over the weekend. And of course, it would be a shame not to pop in for a League of Ireland game while you were there. So that's where we start this week. Waterford starting their women's campaign, their first ever official home game, I believe, in the RSC, a sunny southeast indeed. Donny, you were there. How was the match day experience, first of all?
Yeah, it was very good overall, I thought. When we got into the taxi from town and said that we were going to the RSC, your man was like, "Oh yeah, there's something on there today, all right." So it had filtered through to the cabbies anyway that something was afoot, and we explained what it was to him. So that I kind of, on the basis of him knowing about it and the way he was talking, I assumed that maybe the crowd would be good. But to have it over 1,000 people was great. 1,076 was the official attendance given. There was at least 1,078 people there because they didn't scan my ticket nor my wife's ticket. Because when we got there, it was only about 5 minutes before kickoff. There was a queue of about 50 young girls who had obviously come with a football team or something. They all had print out tickets to be scanned, and we just walked straight past the queue, and there was nobody there to scan ours, so we didn't get counted, even though we had valid tickets. But yeah, really nice vibe, very family friendly. As I said, lots of representation from local kids teams, I think, in the area. A real sort of collective, sort of cross section of society, and everyone seemed in good form. And they weren't. There was a sense of maybe the somewhat historical nature of it being the first home game for the women's team, that they weren't overly, there was no backbiting when things ultimately didn't go their way. Everybody stayed to the end. All the subs got applauded on and off with a lot of gusto, and yeah, a very upbeat and enjoyable experience.
Good to hear. Well, after last weekend's last ditch defeat to Shamrock Rovers, it certainly seemed like a bit of doom and gloom over Tolka Park that weekend. But Owen Weirin, I think he went with the exact same startup that he went with in the opening game against Rovers. This At this early stage, it was a must-win game, really. But 4-0 win, it was much needed. But after about 60 minutes, was it squeaky bum time, or were Shells in full control at that stage?
Yeah, an unusual sort of dynamic to the game, I suppose, in the sense that you could see pretty immediately that Waterford had shown up to contain. The modern parlance of the low block was being utilised right from the off, really, giving our players a lot of time on the ball in our own half. And then it was kind of up to us to try and find the key to unlock the door further forward, which we struggled to do. Some balls down the right flank created some half chances and whatnot. But we were kind of huffing and puffing and not really, their keeper wasn't forced into any great saves too frequently, until there was a penalty then awarded. Roma had a very good game, but Jesus, she was in the middle of absolutely everything. She was booked for diving, which seemed harsh. Now, I haven't watched anything back, as you might expect, given.
Sorry, Donny, was that dive in the box, Donny? Just to
Yes,
clarify, it was. Yeah, okay.
yeah. So she went down on the left hand side of the box. I mean, whether it was a foul or not, even I don't think it has to be binary where either you're cheating or it's a stonewall penalty. It might have just been a coming together, and a bit of common sense could have maybe just diffused the situation, or just let the game go. But obviously, when you're brandishing yellow cards for players for simulation, it's that's a kind of a scarlet letter that nobody really wants. But Roma, to be fair, didn't hold her back long, because she was fouled for a legitimate penalty only a few moments after that, which frankly, as I said, when we were kind of huffing and puffing, um, a spot kick is exactly okay what we needed to be able to put ourselves in front, and then see if Waterford were able to change up the script. But unfortunately, Noel missed from 12 yards, and the keeper made a good save diving to her right.
Yeah, eagle-eyed viewers may have just checked the result, but as you said there, Noel Murray, 2 missed penalties. I'm sure Noel will be absolutely fuming, but it's a little bit unusual because there was another penalty sandwich in between those two, which was dispatched very nicely by Roman McLaughlin.
Yeah,
The third one then, Dunny, was given back to Noel, and she hit an almost identical penalty, which, to the credit of the keeper, she saved again. I thought it was a little bit odd. Would you think that was some sort of agreement, or?
it felt unusual at the time as well, and so we're kind of fast forwarding there, obviously. But like you're right to say that for the best part of an hour or more, we were, once you've missed that penalty, then you're thinking, well, they're kind of mobilized by having conceded the penalty and then not conceded the goal. The crowd was up. Biggest cheer of the day probably was from the penalty save. And then we're coming on to halfway through the second half. To be fair, Owen Weir made some attacking changes, and they paid dividends. But we when we ended up scoring in the 64th minute, I think it was, we scored 4 in 10 minutes. So, and there was a missed penalty thrown in there as well. So yeah, the penalty situation was odd because Roma scored the third goal from the spot, and then there was a subsequent penalty again given, and Noel having missed one, Roma having just scored one, you would have assumed that Roma would have stayed on it. No one really went over and sort of demanded the ball. And I think Noel, in as much as anything, sort of felt, well, if no one else is going to pick it up, I better pick it up. And she sort of jogged over and got the ball. And whether she thought maybe she'd called the keeper's bluff, she put it in exactly the same place that the first one had gone, and it was an identical save, really. But yeah, I would have liked to maybe have seen Roma take control of it herself. But who knows? They might have had a quiet word with one another on the pitch. And frankly, the jeopardy in the game had probably departed at that stage, because we were sort of coasting to a victory. But I believe Noelle posted about it on Instagram and isn't taking life too seriously. She's still practicing penos, or she'll have to do that during the week. But Noelle played well on the day, so we might just want to rejig who's our nominated penalty taker, or have a conversation about it. But performance-wise, Noelle was very good.
It was good to see Mackenzie Anthony coming on, getting the first goal. When games are 0-0, I was looking at the bookies odds ahead of the game out of interest. It was like incredibly one-sided in terms of the bookies. But until you get that goal, it's up for grabs, and as you said, Waterford had dug in well. An hour was gone, but they seemed to switch off just for a second to allow Mackenzie Anthony towards the back post to get her first Shells goal. That could be a bit of a springboard for her now to get going this year, couldn't it, Dunny?
Yeah, you'd like to think so. It was certainly her best showing in a very brief Shelburne career to this point. It was immediate. Her sort of presence on the field when she came on, very direct running, strong, powerful. Wanted to be involved, was showing for the ball all the time, whether it was deep or a bit further forward. Just really direct, and frankly, it was one of the moments that sort of changed the game. I think now ultimately set pieces kind of dictated it, because a lot of the goals were balls just being swung into the box, and I suppose maybe after 65 or about that minutes of rear guard action, Waterford were going to tire, and if we kept, forcing them to defend, someone was going to make an error or something was going to fall our way. And ultimately, it was a very good set piece delivery from the corner. Strong header won by Mackenzie in the box. I think the keeper maybe got a slight touch fingertip to it, but it hit the underside of the bar and went in. So again, her power wasn't just in the air as she demonstrated there, but she, as I said, very direct runner, looks to have a bit of trickery as well. It was able to go past the player. And ultimately, I'm not sure, where Waterford will shake out when we see, towards the end of the season, how many points they'll accrue in the division. But it was certainly a very impressive looking performance from Mackenzie from off the bench.
Well, a good reaction after last week's defeat to Shamrock Rovers. Next up this Saturday in a game that's been switched from Tolka to the UCD Bowl, just in case anyone is looking at any of the football apps, which, as I checked today, we're still showing Shells at home. That game is in UCD Bowl this Saturday against DLR. Kickoff to be confirmed. I haven't received the details yet, but I'm sure the club will keep us updated. And best of luck to the team then. So, Dunny, before that, Friday night, again, our second home game in a row, following on from the previous week's disappointment against Drogheda. This is a tricky one to know where to start. First of all, a 1-1 draw. I plodded out of Tolka Park feeling a bit gloomy. It actually, to me, it was almost felt as bad as a defeat. Not the results are one thing, these things happen, but I think overall, the feeling around the ground was a bit odd to me. It just felt a little bit strange. And then when I listened back to Damien Duff's comments the following morning from Friday night, he was, without any doubt, he was very disappointed with the performance. I don't know where you want to start with this one, Dunny, so I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, and the hospital ball there. Um, yeah, it didn't feel great. I went to the game on Friday with my brother. He comes to games with me every season, but he wouldn't be there every week. So I don't know. There was an element of me as well. I shouldn't do it, but when you bring someone along that you kind of are hoping that the performance will be exhilarating and that it'll be an amazing experience for them, and they'll see why Shells are so bleeding brilliant. And then that lifeless first half performance at halftime, I'm like, oh god. The first half really is where, or the first 50 minutes, I suppose, if you want to take the goal into account as well. I just listened to Damien Duff's interview once down in Waterford, and he basically said that, to paraphrase, I think he said that, you can't leave halves of football behind, and we kind of did that. We kind of punted on the first half entirely, unintentionally, but that's just how it sort of transpired. And that's going to obviously have an impact on the atmosphere in the building. And then when you restart the second half and you're a goal down inside 5 minutes again, like, it just sucks all the energy out of the crowd. And I suppose, like, in many ways, I'm just looking at my notes here that, like, say one thing that, just as a sort of an overarching thought, is that we look like a team who are sort of searching still for our own identity. That with new players in the building, and undoubtedly the quality that we have in our ranks is superior to anything we've had, I would say, in the last 4 years. I don't really think that's up for debate. But the sort of unity of purpose that we used to always see in every other season with a Damien Duff team, regardless of some shortcomings that we might have in technical ability or some areas of the park where we mightn't have been as flush as others or as other clubs, we very much knew who we were, and we knew what we wanted from a 90 minutes football, and it didn't always go our way, but you could kind of hang your hat on, what you're going to get from Shelbourne FC. And that would have been, say, in the Jack Moylan era, it would have been solid at the back, defensively structured, and then we might try and hit you on the break if Jarvis was there or Moylan himself, and that we always hang in games. This kind of scrappy, and so what I'm saying largely now is that I kind of felt that maybe the sort of 4-4-2 Reds that we saw with the early performances against Drogheda in the President's Cup and the very impressive win over Derry, you were thinking, okay, well, this is our new identity. We keep the ball more. We have loads of shots. We're a bit more gung ho. We kind of, if we go long a bit more frequently maybe than previous years because we've got two big battering rams up there. That's kind of been watered down for me in the last 4 games or so, where now we're not sure. We look unsure of ourselves as an outfit, and we're kind of struggling to find what exactly works best for us.
Yeah, it's difficult to put your finger on it, but Shells would have targeted 6 points from back-to-back home games. Now they've ended up with 1. We've played 6 games, so there's no need for people to be losing the plot. So 6 games. Before those have been at home, and we've only won one of those, so it's not a great return. But again, we saw Duff take action at the break. He withdrew Alex Chapman and Harry Wood in a double switch. He seemed to change the shape, as you said, from a back 4 to the sort of his more slightly favoured back 3. Am I correct that he seems to start games as 4-4-2, and that could potentially be causing a problem? Or does it really not matter what formation you play? It's actual, as he said, it's the intensity on the field of the players that seems to be missing right now.
Yeah, well, certainly we've discussed on here, Andy, about the fluidity, the adaptability, and so on. And there does seem to be a point where we were looking early in the season that this was good, that we were a fluid, dynamic outfit that could flit from one system to another. Whereas now, and I think we kind of said it last week as well, we were kind of hoping that we might stick to one and try and make one work. Because when you're changing in games, when you're being so sort of inept as we were in the first half on Friday, it looks like you're kind of scrambling around for something that could work. And again, we're not losing the head, as you said. And on another day, if one of those efforts off the line go in, we're talking about maybe grittiness and digging it out and winning ugly and those other cliches. But it does look like we're not starting every game 4-4-2. Obviously, we went. We saw the wing backs being employed in Galway from the off, and I thought we had a very good performance there, to be honest. So again, this sort of, I asked some friends of mine as well on the way back up to Dublin today. Overarching feelings on the performance on Friday. That kind of, and that came up in the responses I was getting from people saying we might be better suited to trying a formula and sticking with it. As you said, Chapman was whipped off at half time. And maybe we're, because so few players have stuck their hand up to kind of lead us, we're scrambling around ourselves, wondering, is the formation the issue? I'd sort of be in agreement with Duff there a little bit and say, well, you're out there on the field. We have players of extraordinary talent, other than maybe Kerr McEnroy. And I suppose there's an argument now for Evan Caffrey being one of the players of the season just purely on his on his sort of returns and what he's been asked to do in various positions and whatnot. But there's not enough players out there really grabbing things by the scruff and leading us through a difficult period. And I'm sure that's probably one of the things that's upsetting the manager, is he has assembled a very rich squad of talented players, and you'd kind of like a little bit more inward leadership from the field,
Let's just touch on some of the comments that Duff made afterwards, Dunny, if I can just say what he said here. He said the first half was as bad as we've seen in 4 years. He said it was the worst 45 minutes in 4 years. It was a waste of 45 minutes, and he's worried about the group. What's going on there, Dunny?
Yeah. Um, I'd cast your mind back to the fans forum, where I remember Duff mentioning that he felt that this preseason was the worst he'd ever had, and that he didn't like. He talks about smelling it in the air, that you can kind of sense from the group that something's off. And I don't think in this case he's talking about the virus. We can touch on that if you like, but more so, this was before a ball was kicked. He was saying that the attitude seemed off, or maybe he wasn't seeing the sort of intensity or the motivation from everybody in the way that he hoped he would. Now, I'm sure he's quite a stern taskmaster, and I wonder, maybe is there an element there of like his sort of threshold for intensity is higher than the average Joe's, and maybe he's so conscious of resting or not resting on our laurels from last year that he's sort of looking for even more intensity, even more commitment, even more sort of day-to-day perfection, or as close to it as you can on the training field. And maybe he's looking for these kind of elements that are creeping in, or he senses creeping in, because he was mentioning that, as I said, at the fans forum, and this is kind of has notes of that to me, where he's not called anyone out, and a lot of players are being given minutes. We're going through quite a lot of our squad from the bench in many games now, so I don't know if it's an individual thing. It might be just more of a collective, where he feels that his intensity is not being met.
Yeah, he said again. I listened back to his interview because I thought it was absolutely intriguing, fascinating. He said we need to work hard. Sorry. I think he said we're need to work hard, honesty, togetherness, and I'm not sure we are where we are at the moment. That's a very revealing comment for a manager in any industry to come out with, especially publicly. So there's definitely something going on behind the scenes that you said, Dunny. The phrase he likes to use is "I'm smelling something." And that really means he can feel something behind the scenes, or he's seeing it every day. Now, we saw players leave and we saw players come in. About five or six went either way. So that's not a huge um, overhaul of the squad. Is there a possibility that now we have some new alpha males in the squad who want to establish themselves, or am I just looking for something that's not there?
Well, I suppose.
Has it rocked the boat? Is that's really what I'm trying to say, Dunny?
Well, I suppose we'll never know unless it comes out via the manager. But I wouldn't necessarily go down that route. What it sounds like to me is that he's trying to spur a response from his own players. In that now we're 6 games in, as you said. We've only kept one clean sheet the whole season. These are matches that we've expected more points from at home. We started very well against Derry, and it's not, we haven't hit those highs since. So I wonder, these remarks, are they spiky with an intent to provoke a response from the people he wants to see lead at the football club? And frankly, whether it's Mark Coyle or whether it's Conor Kearns or whether it's Paddy Barrett or someone who's just in the building, like Meepo or Ellis Chapman, leaders lead. Kerr McEnroy, as I said, I think has come in and been looking after his business in a really professional, laudable manner. He's the newest signing, who to me just looks, he's getting on with it. Whatever else is happening, he's looking after his business, and he's doing some very good work. Um, but perhaps Duff wants, some others to be a bit, he's going to be provocative to try and get something back from them that might lift our overall intensity on a Friday.
We'll talk about the game itself in just a minute, Tony, but if I can just add some comments that Ali Coote made after the game as well, which as a fan, I was very pleased to see him speak so honestly. I think he knows you can't pull the wool over the eyes. He said wasn't good from us. Intensity is missing. We didn't deserve to win the game. And then, very interestingly, he said winning the game would have masked over the cracks. That's an interesting little comment that he finished on.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's very honest. And I suppose no harm that you're seeing honesty from the manager and you're seeing honesty from the player as well. And again, he's sort of addressing it head on, and he's obviously the players aren't happy with their output and what it's amounting to, and they feel that they have more in them, and that's good professionalism in one regard, that you're recognizing your shortcomings and you're not happy with it and you want to strive to improve that. And as I said, I don't think we're under any illusions that this is a very talented bunch of players, and that I think maybe that's where some of the frustration is born from, because I think they expect more of themselves, and on paper, we would expect similar. So, the fact that he's said that, I think is good. We just need, these last two home games should have been somewhere to show in your performance what we're talking about here. To get 1 point from 6 is not great. So now we roll into a week off. People are saying that's good for us. Well, the proof will be in the pudding when we rock out to Sligo on a Friday week, and if the performance is good there, great. One win and things are rosy in the garden again, and all of a sudden something can click, and you can be like, okay, this is the formation we need. These are the players that we're going to start every week now for the next little while coming into the Dublin derbies. Because the games don't get any easier. These were the games that we thought on paper looked a little bit more forgiving, and we had a chance to bank some points. We've failed to do that. It's not a crisis by any means, but it just means that you're putting a bit more pressure on the next game and the game after that and so on. And it's, is it going to be easier for the players to show what the manager is looking for in Dublin derbies, in games away from Tolka? I don't know. But hopefully it clicks soon.
So the game itself, in case we actually forget that there was a game, didn't get off to the greatest start. I think the word frustration is probably the best word to describe it on the night. Kerr McInroy, I have him written down here as well, Dunny. He's been absolutely top class since coming in. I have to say, he looks like a real pro, very calm. Again, almost got himself a goal on Friday night, but he is developing into a key player this year.
Yeah, I had Ty Brennan was in touch to me earlier on to tell me that he's the best midfielder in the league. So no pressure there, Kerr. But there's something about him. There's a sort of a seamlessness with all of the other messing that we're talking about, and people not being able to find their feet, and people in different positions and changing systems and so on. He has been beautifully seamless. He has come in and just sat in there as if he was always a part of the team. He's composed on the ball, good range of passing. If we could add a goal or two, which I believe he was able to add to his game in Scotland, he scored a few. He'd really be the all-round midfielder. So absolutely fantastic start from him. More of the same, please. But throwing a couple of goals and we're absolutely cooking there.
Yeah, I think we got ourselves a bit of a diamond there. Cork themselves were not bad, I have to say. The newly promoted team, they made things difficult for us. There was warning signs there after around 3 minutes. Conor Kearns made a fantastic point blank save from a free kick and header. So Cork, were well in the game. They'll probably be slightly disappointed that they didn't get away with the 3 points, but overall, I think they'd probably have settled for that beforehand. But it's now up to Shells, particularly at home, Dunny, is to figure a way to break down these teams coming who I wouldn't say they've figured us out yet. I just don't think we've figured ourselves out so far, and it'll take a little bit of time for that to happen. But Cork were well structured. They could have nicked it at the end also, so they were well in the game. And then there was some similarities to what happened the previous week against Drogheda. Shells created good half chances, you could say, but just couldn't finish them. But overall, particularly in the first half, I think Sean Boyd seemed to be marked out of the game. He was up on his own, it looked like. Meepo came on, tried to get involved, didn't have his best chance, didn't manage to hit the target that I can recall. John Martin had a great chance. Could have been a free out for a challenge on the keeper. I think the ref got it right. And then John, anywhere else, it would have been a goal. So the one thing I've seen in every game this year is that we're creating chances. Whereas in the good old days, it would be Shelburne. It'd be like 1-0 to the Arsenal. It'd be 1-0 to the Shells, a smash and grab. But we're creating, I would say, 5 to 6 really good chances per game. So the chances are there. We just need to stick them in.
Absolutely, yeah. I think again, I looked at the stats, and it was somewhere around, I think, 16 shots on the night from us. The majority off target rather than on, but still, a high number of attempts, and that's been almost every week now, where you're 15-ish or more attempts on goal every match. So, as you said, theoretically, that's always a positive thing. We did speak earlier about the identity that we previously had was not a 15 shots a game team. It was maybe 3, but one of them might go in, and if you kept a clean sheet, happy days. And certainly there is an argument. We could go back through all the fixtures where we've dropped points. If we kept our composure after the restart and go away for 10 minutes, we get a win there. If it wasn't for a wonder goal against Drogheda and we pick up more points there. If it wasn't for Connor spilling the ball against Rovers, we come away with a 1-0 there. There have been moments, and even Ali Coot alluding to it himself, saying we could have found the winner and got the 3 points and won 2-1 on Friday. Ultimately, did we deserve to? You get what you deserve, but in sort of keeping it in the round, there's evidence there to suggest that if we can ameliorate things by like 5%, just make slight adjustments, slight improvements, and if it does click, that because of all these chances we're creating, and because of all the near efforts and the what ifs and the almost and the ands and the buts, we could go on a run and start winning games. I mean, again, this is theoretical, but we're certainly not sitting here scratching our heads on this bank holiday Monday going, oh, we're not creating it. We're not creating a thing. We're not getting shots off. We're not in games. We're very much in every game we play. We're just struggling to maximize the sum of our parts, I think.
Well, we have the international break coming up. There's 2 ways to look at that, good or bad. I think everyone may agree, including the manager, that maybe a little reset time, a few days off here and there will give everyone a chance just to settle down. We're still in a great position. Like, there's a hell of a long way to go. So people should just, I would say, just cool the jets a little bit, fellas, because we're in, as a club and as a team, we're in a great position. I think we're fourth. But like, as we've seen last year, Dunny, this goes all the way to the wire. No matter what happens, you can, as I say, you can't win it at the start, but you may lose it, and we're very much in the mix. I would say, just looking as an old supporter from the good old days and the bad old days, I think it's just now time for the players to really take it on and drive it themselves. there's only so much a coach or a manager can do. Duff has alluded to this in the past that he does everything for these fellas, and that's you're an educator, Dunny. You work with groups of people. You can often tell or sense when something's not quite right in the group. That comes from experience. So Damien seems to be learning that, and I think we're in a good spot overall. So despite the frustrations and the lack of points that we could have had, I think we're in a good position overall. So as we have a little break this weekend, Donny, do you think we'll see an extra fire in the belly Friday week up in Sligo?
You'd hope so. And I think, as we mentioned, I think that's probably what Damien Duff is trying to do here. He's sort of thrown down the gauntlet a little bit to his players, possibly to some of his more senior professionals, and said, as motivate yourself. You show me. And as you said there, he says that he do anything for them, and blah blah blah. I think at this stage, it might be up to them to start repaying him, and I think that's probably what they'll try and do. I know that his captain and others would probably be listening to that, going, okay, I want to make sure that I'm going to have a 9 out of 10 performance the next time to put this right and to start getting the points that we need to accrue back on track. So hopefully the week break can lead to some harmony in training, and again, we might hopefully have a bit more of a united performance in Sligo. Anyone who's been having lingering issues with illness, obviously that could have played a factor on Friday as well. I have I can't say it. Immunodeficient FC. Immunodeficient. Yeah, that was easier to write than to pronounce. Apparently, immunodeficient FC. I was just remembering 3 separate viruses. There was one under Ian Morris, and then there's been 2 under Damien Duff so far. I've never known a team to fall foul of viruses like us. So there was some people, I think Mark Coyle and others were under the weather. I know Meepo's been observing Ramadan as well, which I'm sure he's found a way to work around this in his professional and sporting life. But playing games at night during Ramadan is probably not ideal. Afternoon matches are probably would be, I imagine, easier to manage, just with your food and drink intake. So that ends at the end of the month. I wonder if we might see a bit of an uptick in performances from Meepo around then, possibly. I heard he was also a bit under the weather with this virus as well. So hopefully that clears up and we can put in a good performance in Sligo. And for the Reds who are not that interested in the international break, I hope we can bring a big mob to UCD on Saturday, because with no men's game, we should absolutely be bringing a few hundred people, in my opinion, to that match.
Fingers crossed we see a big Reds contingent there. Indeed. Yeah, I'm sure Meepo is being managed, and despite everyone being up in arms after 2 or 3 games saying this and that, I think we're lucky to have Meepo, and I think he's going to have a really big season ahead for us. Now, Dunny, normally you're mauled by fans every time you're on Tolka, telling you how wonderful you are, and of course, but in Tolka over the weekend, I received a lot of great feedback from on the pod, which is great, and thanks to everyone as always. I'm turning into a bit of a star now in my own household after my recent LOI TV bloopers, and we'll have to send that video into Beatles about sometime, Dunny.
You've gone viral, Andy.
I've gone viral in Balbriggan, that's for sure. And big thanks to everyone who's listened to the show. It's really wonderful to hear all your feedback and your comments and questions. I'll have to bring a notepad with me every time to talk and now to jot them down. But we have had questions in and comments. So, Dunny, we may have touched on some of these so far, so I'm just going to hit you with a few questions.
Sure.
So if we touched on these already, don't worry too much. So this one's from David Hurley. David, thanks very much. He says, "Hey lads, it's been a very up and down start to the season. Do you think we would be better off playing a faster game instead of a dominating possession type game?" That's the first part, Dunny, if you want to go for that one.
Mm. Sure. Yeah, I think I remember saying on the pod that after about 10 minutes of the Shamrock Rovers game, I was thinking, Jesus, we could win the lot here. We looked absolutely unbelievable. So like we came out hot against Derry, and that Rovers performance was very encouraging, and obviously a win away at Waterford was led to a strong start and high hopes. There would have been a lot of Reds fans, I think, who, if you had pressed them on it prior to the start of the season, would have settled for European football again, and would have thought that we'd be in around the mix for third or fourth spot, and then seeing how well we looked early in this season, you're thinking, oh, actually, hang on, we're right in this here, to go and try and win it again. So possibly the sort of frustration is born out of seeing that sort of high ceiling, and then we've not been really able to live up to that. In the matches in the intervening period, regarding that, we talked about this last week. Regarding the recycling the ball, possession based game, that kind of stuff. Brian Stafford responded to me earlier in a similar vein, just saying we probably need to go longer to Boyd more often, because we've seen us get chances in almost every game when Paddy Barrett, slices one 30 yards, and Boyd can either knock it down to somebody else. Chapman had a good chance against Drogheda. That's the one that springs to mind. These happen. Boyd will win more than his fair share of those kind of duels. So I think there's probably an argument at stages in games where slinging the ball more direct would work. But then, of course, you could be rubbing other people up the wrong way then as well, if we can't turn into just long ball FC either. So I think it's about game management and picking your moments to do so.
David finishes that off saying it's early days yet, but will the draws catch up with us? Question mark, question mark. Well, we're 6 games in. I think we know that drawing too many games really in the long term doesn't do us any favour, but I think sometimes there are good draws out there, but I think we'll have a better picture of that, Dunny, after at least one round, maybe 2 rounds of games, to see how the stats are looking.
Yeah, it is a bit too early, all right. And again, like, not every point is created equal. As I said, you can have some very good draws. Ultimately, you never want too many. If you're up around double-digit draws, which I think we might have been, say, 3 seasons ago, that's a lot of points left on the table. But we haven't seen ourselves up against Pats, who a lot of people would still be tipping to be thereabouts this year. And we haven't played Bows yet either. So, like, were we to win those games, then all of a sudden, the draws that we've picked up here and maybe left points behind, you're going, well, that actually looks fine now, because we've sort of overachieved, or we've got the sort of bonus points of winning the games against Pats and Bows. So yeah, but it certainly doesn't make our lives any easier going forward, because it means you probably have to overachieve, or those crunch derby fixtures, which can be bonkers and can go anyway. Suddenly now there's a little bit more pressure on them, just for our overall points tally.
Question here from Dave Connolly. Both lads up front have been disappointing so far. Teams are coming to Tolka and sitting deep. We have to learn how to open them up. Now, I would imagine Dave's referring to Boyd and Meepo there, but again, we touched on this a bit earlier, Dunny. It's still early days, and I think we are creating chances. It's just, that's the hardest part of football, isn't it? Putting the ball in the net.
Yeah, again, I think we're sort of victims of our early success and what we showed. If you had frozen time after the President's Cup and the Derry game, you'd say Boyd and Meepo, match made in heaven. Who'd have thought it? Two two number nines in effect up together, sort of old fashioned 4-4-2 stuff, and it was working like a charm. It hasn't clicked massively since then. Obviously, they combined for Meepo's only goal so far that in the league against Waterford. That was beautiful, great work from Boyd. So we've seen it work, and then we've seen it be stifled. And yeah, some teams are going to sit in. Unfortunately, like we're saying this, teams are sitting in. The annoying thing is that normally would mean, like Waterford with the women, that like if you get one, you're probably winning the game, or but we're having teams sitting in and somehow managing to score more than us or score the same as us. So they're not sitting in the whole time. But again, I don't think it's that far off. And I think maybe if we did click, that you could see Boyd and Meepo back to that the very exciting partnership that they had that was going well at the start of the season.
Well, I will make a bold prediction now. I think Shells could go on a bit of a run in the next couple of games, and all of this will be forgotten. So let's wait and see. Last comment, Dunny, is from Sean O'Kelly. Thanks, Sean. Sean accosted me in Tolka Park the night, asked me to read this out, so I better. He said the four midfielders aren't working, and we need to revert back to wingers. I assume he means the four across the middle in the 4-4-2. We're most dangerous when we had wingers and put crosses into the box. Well, I think we all agree with that, Sean, but Tony, I shall let you comment on that.
You're throwing me all the live grenades today, Andy. Thanks for that.
All the good ones,
yeah. I think there's some value in that comment. All right. I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, Harry Wood has looked exceptional at times this season. We've already spoken about how good Cara McEnroy has looked. So, like, already there, two of your sort of mainstays in the middle have had pretty exceptional performances this season. So, but I do understand the remark regarding sort of the width or the absence of it. And we've spoken on here before about, when we started with Caffrey on one side and Wood on the other, neither are traditional wingers. So they're not going to give you those traditional winger things. They're not going to, knock it down the line and whip crosses in. That's not what they're being asked to do. Is there an argument for maybe going back to a 5-man midfield, 3 central midfielders and 2 orthodox wingers? I think there could absolutely be. And I wouldn't be shocked if that's not something we see in the future. But yeah, I mean, like, we brought a load of wingers into the club. Ryan O'Kane, Tulloch, we have Coote. Dan Kelly obviously hasn't been able to feature really yet because of injury, but like, these are out and out wingers. So I think there is an argument for that. The problem is then, of course, you have to choose between Boyd or Meepo if everybody is fit. And then, we had Meepo in his first interview at the club saying that he was here for minutes and, expecting things. Also, you'd wonder where would Ellis Chapman, maybe he could be the third more advanced central player, I suppose. Him or Wood. I think it might actually benefit Harry because Harry's been playing so well. I think maybe putting him back in somewhere he's a little bit more familiar could see him sort of contribute more to efforts on goal and goal involvements. But that's the kind of the choice you're going to have to make if we go with orthodox conventional wingers and a 5-man midfield. Someone is getting the chop between Boyd and Meepo and is sitting on the bench.
No more hospital passes, Dunny. I promise. Thanks for that. So that's it. We have no men's game this weekend, international break. But as Dunny mentioned, the women's team are in action on Saturday afternoon in UCD against DLR. Not a million miles away from the majority of fans. It would be great to get a good Reds contingent out there. So maybe keep an eye on the Shells pages this coming week. Dunny, just wanted to, before we finish up, as I said, no game this weekend, but we will be here next week and we hope to have a very special guest, which we will announce later this week. One, hopefully not to be missed, It's an interview that has been, let's say, years in the brewing, years in the waiting. A man who's got a lot to say, so we look forward to that. We'll be putting up the information later this week. So finally, before we head off, you can get in touch. All the show notes and all the information will be in the show notes below. And Dunny, until next week, have a great week, and we will speak to you then.
Thanks, Andy.